all for coming here at the end of the season. I know a lot of people are starting to fade, getting ready to leave. Hopefully some of you get to stay down here and sweat all the time. I'll be thinking of you. First of all, a huge thank you, because this wouldn't be happening without Chris Holleran back here taking a picture. And her husband Gary, who carries things for us. But Chris does all of the... Well, Mary Livermore, whom you hear from by email, is our executive director. She's a Dressage4Kids. So, but Chris does all the stuff down here, and I just show up. I don't have to do anything. So I want to also take just a moment to thank those of you who have helped to support this. We try with everything with D4K, Dressage4Kids. We try to make it possible for just about anyone to come and keep prices low to nothing, which we've done here, but I do, a lot of you have made smaller and not so small in some cases donations, and that's greatly appreciated. This is the last of the, please help those of you coming in, help yourself to food, and you can check in also. Don't be bashful, but I just start on time.
Besides being late.
Right.
We also do, with this training for teaching program, which of course is all about how to teach, not so much what to teach, what are the aids for left lead canter, but in this case today it'll be how do we help. Sorry, that's my phone. I didn't think I had any service. You know, how do we help someone? Not, again, it's not so much the writing theory, but how to teach. And for those of you who haven't been at any of our earlier programs this winter, they all are, we videoed them and they are online at our YouTube channel. If you ever can't find them, just let me know. Or better yet, let Mary Livermore know. She knows much more than I do. We also do a few Zoom calls during the year, lectures, and we have the occasional in-person how to teach kind of day where it's a little bit of a lecture and then everybody watches the same rider and this is what I would do with it, this is what I would do with it kind of thing. And if anyone wants to host one of those, we can try to figure that out. In the past, a couple of years ago, we asked everyone to send in their little special phrases and analogies that they use. And we've collected all of those, and if some of you may already have this, but I'm just passing it out, I think it's really fun. Occasionally I go, what in the world are they talking about? But it's just, you know, a little addition to, I'm always thrilled when I'm watching teaching and someone comes up with a phrase or a sentence and I go, yes, I'm going to steal that. So we're stealing this, and please send in anything you want to add. This is kind of an ongoing little project of phrases. So, and please help yourself if you want to get up for a snack or a drink or pizza or whatever's up there. Just go, don't worry about it. Also, if you didn't check in when you came in, we'd love it if you would just make sure your name is down on the list right there at the end of the table.
Do I get that?
If they would like one, we would
Please.
like
You made it very intriguing now.
Well, it's fun. It really is fun. So, without further ado, we'll be still handing things out. Well, first of all, let me just say how incredibly generous our speakers have been this winter. Every winter we get we do it down here to give their time to us, and I know they've all had Sundays where they've been down at the beach and doing nothing, I'm sure, like most of you. So we really appreciate that they do come at the end of the day and they can't watch the, what is it going on? Basketball game, something, yeah, something. Here it is. So without further ado, David Marcus, Angela Jackson, Olivia LaGoy-Weltz, and Tina Steward. And I'm going to ask first that they each give us the nutshell who they are, where they've been, what they've done, in a nutshell. David, you want to start? Oh, no, you start. Oh, no, you start.
David Marcus. I live here year-round in Wellington. I'm a dual citizen, US and Canada. And I did the Olympic Games in 2012 and the World Championships in 2014. Yeah, that's a short version. I have a training business down here.
I'm Angela Jackson. I'm originally from Germany, where I was a show jumper, and then did do dressage here in the US. Done young horses for a long time and kind of brought up a couple of kids to the ranks.
So very successful.
Who've done quite well. My name is Olivia LaGoy-Weltz. I'm originally from Northern California, which is where I met Tina. And I have sort of ridden at our elite level, and I'm based in Virginia the rest of the year, and did a lot of my training with Tina, and then Debbie, and Allie as another friend, coach, mentor, and we have a business. I teach a lot of young adult trainers and youth, and we do courses of all levels, from young to up to Grand Prix, hopefully, to make it.
I'm Steward, live in Eugene, Oregon, from California originally, which is where we met. I'm a veterinarian, equine chiropractor, and I've been teaching dressage for 40 years, so I'm old. And I haven't accomplished much competition-wise, but I've taught a lot of young professionals and upper-level FBI riders and a few international riders. But, yeah, so I teach craft baths and do a little vet work.
So I'm just going to throw out some various movements, and again, it's not so much what we're looking for as you know, sit on the left seat bone and twinkle with the right brain, but how can we help riders figure out how to do these things? And I want to start with what I think is the bane of many people's existence, which is turns on the haunches, and then we will turn it into walk pirouettes. When you're trying to teach a rider how to do turn on the haunches, perhaps first with a horse that knows what he's doing, as opposed to next we'll do the horse that doesn't really know what he's doing. Olivia, you're looking at me like.
That's definitely one of those things as a clinician when people are like, can we do walk pirouettes? You're like, because they can go wrong so many ways.
You want to start?
Sure. I would say that I always, like anything, trying to break it down into lots of sections. So like number one, first in the walk, can they go down the long side in a proper haunches in, like looking down the wall and riding 3 tracks, and or a little bit 4 tracks. And then if they can do that well, I have found the most success then asking them to do the same thing, and can they do it on a 10-meter circle? And that helps a lot with teaching them how to ride, keep the horse up to the outside side as they turn around, because most of the time if you walk up and say, okay, now turn, a lot of them, fall through or get stuck. So that really helps with like people that like or sit the wrong way and fall and that kind of thing, because you have to stay up and go around that way. And then once they have the feel for that, then I'll have them make the circle smaller and smaller until it's the right feel thing. Is a basic, I think. And then you have different issues that can come up if the horse doesn't know how to do it as well, but that's a little bit different. I find that sequencing my most successful approach.
Who would like to, anybody want to add to the teaching the basic turn on the haunches to the rider?
What I think helps some riders, if they have a sense of what a half pass looks like and feels like, is turn on the haunches can feel like a little miniature half pass on a circle, which often helps them think a little more about getting that outside hind stepping in the direction of the turn.
It's a phrase that I a lot of times use when they, you should sit out there, like, sit right there, yeah, sit up here. She was talking about that outside hind, that
Yeah.
you step forward, and I was like, just imagine those two hind legs are yours, and you have to step that around, so as you are sitting up there asking for, just imagine that those hind legs have to step under your seat bones. And I see for the kids, that makes a big difference when I tell them, just imagine those legs are yours back there. And see if you can, feel them stepping forward, towards your seat bone.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add that I think to your point, Olivia, going like from the haunches in was my sort of first instinct that I thought of to the circle. I think the hard thing going into that small circle I find is people start to make it an inside rein exercise. So I like to go between shoulder in and haunches in on that little circle, and just that it's really about mobility and your ability to control the horse. Ultimately, I think is what walk pirouettes and canter pirouettes are about. And so I think it's for me trying to make and help people understand also the mechanic and what the aids are, so that they're not getting stuck in some place there.
Okay, you mentioned getting stuck, and I think one of the biggest problems we run into is the horse that
Right.
gets a little lazy behind or whatever and pivots. So
But
if you
I'm
have
already
one
thinking
that's
a
kind
step
of
ahead, yeah. with what-
confirmed about that, how can you help the rider?
I actually make them count out loud, because the first part is rhythm. And I just might then go around the track and I said, tell me 1, 2, 3, 4 that you feel starting from the outside hind, and then they just have to tell me, and then I was like, okay, now tell me from the inside hind, and then they have to really think about it, and then when they start doing that, then I tell them, when you do your walk pirouette, I want you to walk, talk to me, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's something that stuck with me from jumping, because we had to be with our strides and everything with that, and so the counting has helped a lot of kids that I have taught. I have one that has a little special need, and he had a really, really hard time grasping it, and that counting, he does it in a lot of places, he counts a lot, and that really helps him. So, I don't know, people, but I think getting it on the string first helps, and then taking it in the circles and then the half crosses and then the triangles.
Anything else? And going, I mean, we've sort of covered it a little bit with that, what can be a big jump from the turn on the haunches, 3 feet, a meter, whatever, hind legs around, to the walk pirouette, which they then have to come to do. And many of us are teaching students on kind of lazy horses, and they may have been doing this long enough that they figured out how not to do it. Any particular thoughts on how to help that step?
Me?
Sure. Sure.
What I like to play with, and again, it depends on the skill set of the rider, but a lot of times if you think about just getting the walk a little bit tippy-toey, like on the brink of a half step maybe, or a trot transition, but where you feel like you can compress the horse but keep the walk a little nervous, and then make your turn a little bit. Get the haunches in, do it piece by piece, but I find a lot of times that people, even just they visualize, a piaffe, and they kind of put that tone and feel into their body. A lot of times the horses will heat up a little and just stay a little active. And, if they stick, then you go back to making it a little bigger, and then you go back to making it a little smaller. But if they can get a feel for compressing and activating, heating up the horse, it'll help in the pirouette.
I think if I've got like a little bit like sticky type, that sometimes we'll do like a quarter turn trot out, walk, quarter turn trot out, walk, and then half turn trot out, walk, half turn trot, just to make it like get faster, get the horse like woken up to it. And also that like, because those ones like that sort of schoolmaster type, and not even, sometimes it's also the young ones, come and automatically start to back off to it a little too much, like get too slow. But sometimes that's like a step along the way. Then I can like tap into like creating a bit of what she's talking about, is getting the horse a little like,
That's
oh,
probably where you
know,
would
with,
start,
like-
and then you move to what I said.
Depends on the horse, you know,
Depends on the horse.
sometimes that's enough, like, if it's like really a slug or, you know,
Yeah.
growing roots, then I do the,
Yeah.
you know, the trot out.
I used to call it the Fred Astaire walk, the quick climb. But now I run into the problem, I get looked at like, who's
They
Fred
don't know.
Astaire? I have to look it up.
To me, it's a lot about collection, and one of the things that for me defines collection is my collection, specifically in the walk, is my ability to trot, canter, halt, and so I still want those things within that walk pirouette, sort of to your point, to be able to walk out, trot out. I play with all those things, so that it's really just about being able to do anything from the walk that you're in.
So, we now can do a walk pirouette, let's jump right on ahead to a canter pirouette. How do we start, let's say the rider who is on a horse that knows how to pirouette?
I like to start on like a square and just making a deep corner, making collection in the corner, making quarter pirouettes, you know, then from like a shoulder four to a quarter pirouette to haunches in, just control. And then probably one of the last things I do is bring it small. Yeah.
And I think that also the shoulder in on the square is super helpful because we have to get to the outside, you know.
Yeah.
So, and there's so many variants in the square you can run it. And we can make it larger, smaller, you know, depending on how quick they can learn to keep that horse organized. And
Would anyone do anything different if you were helping a rider who doesn't really know how to do it, train a horse that doesn't know how to do it? Our favorite thing to do.
I have three things I like to do, or check in on and try to make sure are in place. One is just the haunches in and the canter down the wall. You know, haunches in ultimately on the circle and being able to spiral that in and take it out. And then the other thing is, you know, what usually happens with a pirouette, especially a horse that knows it, is they either take over the turning and get it, say a full pirouette done in 2 or 3 strides, or they just do a tiny volte, or, you know, all the above. And I find it helps the rider, I call it canter on the spot, but if they can stay in an active canter, really compress it to where it's like practically covering no ground, and then get out of it, and bring it back, and get out of it. And that gives them a little feel for that stride by stride control in the turning. So those would be the other thing I love is walk pirouette to canter pirouette, which is a great exercise. It's especially horses that go behind the leg. It's a nice way to send the horse forward to a pirouette rather than retracting.
Anything else? Okay, shoulder in. Green rider, trained horse.
green rider trained horse.
Yes. And everybody speak at once. Is that because it's so obvious or because we have no idea?
That can go in so many ways wrong.
Shoulder in is hard for me because that's like one of the foundations, right? And it's so easy that people get on this inner rein and start like swinging the neck to the inside and running down the wall. So it's hard to first educate people that for me, it has to start from a straight place. I think when people think shoulder in, they immediately think bend, and I like to think alignment maybe is a better word than straightness. But that I like to use counter shoulder in to start teaching people who don't really understand, because then they have a wall or something that helps them kind of learn how to use their outside rein as control for speed and angle, and then kind of translate that to the inside.
Yeah, I think the counter shoulder in is something that I do with all the youngsters when they first learn, because they always want to get away
Yeah.
right
Take them
backwards.
back a little
And
bit.
especially with the young horses, so I definitely use the counter shoulder in for that, because that gives me like an extra helper.
Right.
You know,
Boundary.
because I can ride forward and the wall brings them back to me, you know, and I can teach them to do that. And I think when you start getting that a little bit, then I think you have a better idea of it, to bring it the other way around.
I think for the horses too, it helps that it doesn't make the control so much about the rider. They understand from the wall that boundary.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to start on the reins too much, which is
Exactly.
always a good thing.
This is maybe a really dumb question, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. Is that like, the same as leg yield on the wall or different? Like, I've actually never heard of counter shoulder in.
This is
It's,
like
it,
Okay.
Yeah,
it's just the
but
same.
maybe with a bit more positioning.
A little more
Yeah.
outside rein, like straighter.
In Europe, we do it a lot.
I
I mean, that was.
Maybe I've never got that far.
So is it on the way, just to try and make it clear, to a run bear?
Could be the same flexion and angle, I
Yeah.
guess, but it's, yeah. I think of a counter shoulder in as like, if this is a shoulder in, you know, then this is a counter shoulder in, like with.
So you do a
I
top
call it
but
head to
then
the wall
you
leg
do
yield.
it to the other side.
Head to the wall, like, as stated.
That's what you guys
Yeah,
are talking
I mean,
Yeah.
like, I think that's
Yeah.
what it's more, what do you call
Except
it?
the shoulders into the inside.
No.
No, they're talking about,
Okay,
basically
maybe
they're talking about the
Okay,
horse off the
I
inside.
want someone to stand up and demonstrate it.
On the outside.
Go.
I could actually maybe, well,
You can show it.
if you think about it in the way of, so you ride a shoulder in left this way, right?
Here,
So-
I think that's
Just imagine that you're doing, that wall is here. You're doing it this way, the same, but with the head to this wall. Just imagine instead of
So,
doing it on
like,
this
this
wall.
would be shoulder in, right? And this is the head, these are ears.
We have an artist.
Correct.
These are ears.
That's the counter.
So it's like, what you're sort of saying, leg yield on the
That
wall.
I think more
That's what they're
commonly, I actually have never heard it, I don't know, like, you guys heard
I
of
could've
counter
made that up.
shoulder in?
No.
You guys heard leg yield on the wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I think that's,
But
but I do think that it's a bit more what you were saying on the outside aid, like where it's like maybe on a young horse, I
Well,
might
it's
use a little more
The
bend.
inside aids, because it's inside the belly.
Right.
No, they're talking about using, like, what he was talking about is like
Being
really
straight.
riding it quite straight and prioritizing the alignment.
the alignment on the outside.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to touch it.
Assuming you've already gotten supple and soft and bendy elastic.
So does everyone know what we're talking about?
Yeah. And rhythmic, and over the back and through. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I know when I was growing up, they would ask us to do like, start with the shoulder coming out of the corner, and then at E or E, we had to make it straight, and then do the counter one to the end, and then make
Okay,
it straight.
now,
and go back to the
So we're going left,
Yeah,
we've got a little shoulder in, then we make them straight,
and then.
and then you turn the front end of the wall
Yep, and you turn the haunches like a little bit.
to the inside.
So the haunches then go on the, like, to the second track, and you still go left, but now you shoulder in this way, left. You lost?
Would it be
Like
shoulder
it
out?
on
Is
Like
it also
leg
shoulder out,
on
but
the
it's
wall.
still the bend in the direction of the,
No, I suppose it's like a shoulder in.
I'm doing shoulder in.
yeah.
Yes,
Okay, now I get straighter.
uh-huh.
Now what do I do?
No, you go a bit straight.
You're facing the
Straight
wall.
on the wall.
This is
That's
very
what
straight.
Shoulder in.
Yes,
And then someone said then you
Straight
make the
ahead.
shoulder in a little
straight ahead,
straight ahead.
yes,
Yeah.
and now you push the haunches, and now
Yeah.
you
There you
shoulder
go.
in that way.
Well,
Your
like
haunches
it's on the
in,
So I'm bending
haunches
this
out.
way.
Yeah.
Same thing.
So it'd be like shoulder
So
out.
the bend is to the inside.
Okay,
To the outside.
shoulder in,
Straight.
straight.
Yeah, and now you do that.
So I'm bending the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all got it? Changing bed.
Shoulder out.
Okay. Anything else I can demonstrate? Okay, have we said enough about shoulder in?
Let's move on. It's a good time.
Well, okay. Leg yielding? Green rider, green horse.
Just tell them to do it.
Just do it. That's my favorite phrase, except usually it's just shut up and do it.
Just push
Start by trying, then I'll tell you what's wrong with that.
Yeah, well, that's what I do.
Okay?
Yeah. Okay, so what's our most common leg yielding problem? The shoulder's way over here and the
Right.
haunches aren't happening.
Right.
Now what do we do? How do we help this rider?
I think that's where that leg yield
Yeah,
down the
I was gonna say that too.
a great place for someone to start to feel that first sideways movement and engagement of the hind leg. You're moving, I mean, in theory, in this drawing, head to the wall. You're going for a little bit of a right bend off the right leg, which is the inside leg in that case, because it's inside the bend. But just to give the rider a feeling of moving a horse sideways from the leg is kind of the beginning of them, just in terms of cognizance, to sense the feel of it when they actually turn down a quarter line or center line and ask the horse to move sideways. They'll know what that feels like, and then you can say, okay, does this feel the same? And usually they say no. Okay, we'll try fixing the shoulders and then move the whole package sideways. That's one approach. But this is a green horse and green horse.
Green horse and green horse.
Yeah, well, he's starting with that.
Yeah, I like to do it in increments, I think. I think people tend to try right away to get from point A to point B, and I think that often gets them clinging or grabbing or pinching onto their horse. So I'm also visual, and so I tell people, to try and get from point A to point B, do it with the inside hind leg between the front legs. So if you're leg yielding right, try and get the left hind between the front legs, and then just ask once, and then go straight, and then ask again, go straight, and try not to get all the way there. I think that's when people get all of this, kind of contortion thing. So yeah, just 1/8 at a time.
Anything to add?
Okay, let's go ahead. Half holes.
You brace your back, you close your leg, you squeeze your fingers, and poof. That's what the books say, isn't it? Right.
There's the 1/8 halt, the 15/16 halt, the 3/4 halt.
What are we asking? How we teach a
How
half
how
halt?
you help a rider learn that, how to do a half hole. Let's say
Yeah.
we've got our nice 16-year-old rider with her wonderful schoolmaster, who's been very well trained but not the most sensitive creature on earth. Definitely needs some half holes.
Transition.
He's a double bridle.
Already has a double bridle. Tina.
You tell him a farm group.
I would start with a lot of actual transitions, like a lot of trot, walk, trot, and if that's not working, walk, halt, walk, and do the full transition until you get the thought that you can okay, if I start to think, then the horse responds, and then.
One thing with half halts for me is to me, I always try and help people understand that it's about bringing a horse to balance more than anything. And sometimes that, on a lazy horse, can be a driving aid. Sometimes that can be a collecting aid. It's sort of dependent. So I think to your point, once you're able to do a transition on your thought almost, that it doesn't take more than a step, then you're starting to influence your horse in the moment. And then you can start to feel how that balance changes and start to experiment a little bit with how to control that balance that's under you. That makes sense.
Sounds so romantic when you.
It does.
I
Another
do
good
it.
exercise that helps a rider get a feel for a half halt is just a halt rein back, which it's hard to do really well. And in theory, you would halt, a little bit close your fist, close your leg. The horse should kind of, start with your leg probably, then close your fist almost simultaneously. But the horse should have a desire to go forward. And if you don't yield your fist, they should drop their neck, and submit to the bit and get a little round. And if you keep a little pestering with the leg and keep your fists, they should lift their back and want to step back. But just that whole moment of that you close your leg and restrain a little with your fist, that the horse's answer is to go like this, not shove, right? So I think that can help a rider get a feel for in the trot and in the walk and in the canter, that if I do this, the horse should get round and collect a little bit, not, right, shove themselves backwards, right, with a gaping mouth. Just like this one.
I talk about with mine, what I call literal half holes, which are going halfway to hole and go,
Yeah.
and half goes.
Yeah.
I use that term, so whether it's as you said, an energizing type thing or a collecting type thing, you've gotta have both of them before you're gonna kind of put them together.
If I've got one too that's like struggling also with that spot where they don't realize they're running through, and this probably works better with someone that would have an idea of how to long line, but I will say, if I was long lining this horse, could I stop it? And could I send it going? And could I stop it? And could I send it going? Because I think some of the schoolmasters too, you will run into where everything's just gotten so dead that you can't, and fundamentally if you can't stop and then go, and stop and then go, like you cannot create all this magical stuff on the thought and, like everything we're talking about, it like you can't be like, can we stop? And we go.
That's, I'm sorry, it's so simple. Well, they go when you tell them to go and stop when you tell them to stop.
Well, and then you can make it like, 5/8, this, that, the other thing,
Yeah.
but like, and we can make it very like, and on your seat and on your back and on these thoughts and stuff, but at the end of the day, like if you were like, if I was ground driving this horse, how do I do that? Like, because like we can make it all the things, but like the basic things that make up any of the stuff that we're talking about is like, does it stop when I say stop? Does it go when I say go? Will it yield, follow a rein? Like, can you turn each way? First from the inside, even though we want to put them on the outside rein and into the outside rein, and will they move away, like from each leg? And if you have that, then it's finding the recipe of how you apply any of those things. But if anything's going wrong, one of those things isn't working. Right?
I'm so glad you said that, because so often it's weight this seat bone and flutter this leg and, whatever. Stop, go, bend, turn.
Turn.
Get off the inside leg. Okay, now we can make
Yeah.
it,
So
beautiful, we can make it beautiful.
What I run into a lot with, especially the kids, when they first learn this, even if they're sitting on the schoolmaster, if they only pull, saying, well, I'm half halt, and that the half halt is more than just pulling, and I think that will take some time for them to understand, is that, you have to equalize it, balance it, like you said, what you pull here also needs to come from here, so that we have that go as well, If we only pull from the front and not close from behind, then we're not having a balance, and then we cannot release because the horse is not in balance. And I think that will just time, even on a schoolmaster, for most of my students, that takes a lot of practicing to get that feeling right. And even when they're halting, I'm like, okay, now you're halted, but the horse like it's still somewhere, they're like this. And they're like, okay, I'm halted, I said, well, can you go again? And then they literally just scramble to their feet again, trying to trot. I'm like, well, that didn't go well. Can we try to keep that a little bit more here rather than falling like an egg in a frying pan here? And then the poor horses, when a schoolmaster will be, once you do it right, teach them that feeling, like, oh, there it is.
And I say, first of all, a half hold is only a half hold if the aid subsides. Otherwise, it's a hang or whatever. And that, just like when you put your leg on and say trot, the horse changes, he goes from a 4-beat gait to a 2-beat gait. It's only a half halt if something changes.
Yeah.
And I think that's, the horse is trucking on down the ring.
Water skiing on your
Yeah,
long lines,
exactly.
sand skiing.
Yeah, something has to change. Anybody have anything to add there?
Just to go to the hand thing, I just try and help people like get their body to influence their horse's body. The mouth is the smallest part of that animal, so it's kind of silly to think that we could influence this whole horse just by this. And so when kids are learning or greener people, it's easy because that's kind of their balance point in a way. But that's how can I get this horse to, like you said, go, turn, stop from my body more so than from my head.
Okay, somebody mentioned halt. Square halts. Don't look at me like that, Olivia.
Little clicker, little sugar.
Don't everybody stick your butts on.
You go. Square halts.
Well, I mean,
There's so many variations.
in my
Sure.
experience, if the horse is pretty balanced coming into the halt, they're probably gonna halt square. And part of that balance, you know, often what I see go wrong is like canter halts, they canter in and they go splat, you know. And then it's hard to resurrect them and go on because their legs are wherever and the thoracic swing now, trunk, chest, you know, is dumped to the earth. So learning how to prepare the balance. So again, that little bit of a canter on the spot or a little bit of thinking half steps before a halt, something that balances the horse. And if they do tend to go splat, it's like take them to that brink and get out of it. Take them to that brink and get out of it. And Charles Ducombe, who I adore in all my ways, said a horse should halt like a snowflake landing. And it gives you that lovely sense that they come in and they have their energy, whether it's canter or trot. But that, like the last couple steps are collected and composed, and usually you end up with a pretty square halt. And then you can trick train it.
Clunk, clunk. Step up and maybe.
Sugar.
I don't have anyone ever said that to me, but it said it should be like an airplane landing.
Yes.
Yeah,
It should be like an airplane landing. So
which is that balance.
I think that's a pretty good visual for anybody. You're not going nose diving, you're gonna crash.
Well, and I think this is gonna sound really dumb, but remembering to train them, you know, like that we do so, and some horses will bring you to it because, some will be like, oh, I need to go, I don't know, walk, trot, halt, and then you end up doing it. But I've had ones where I'm working on so many other things and I go, okay, now I've gotta go show, and you go and you know, like, or
No
ones that,
step right.
or ones that have been not well trained, and do the splat or quit on you or whatever, and those ones, like, I've ended up having to do like a ton of transitions up the center line because they just start to like backpedal or, you know, yeah, or just like come in and like crash, so like canter walk up center line, or trot walk up center line, so that they also don't just quit on you. It's been helpful, like with a few, and that's a horse that's like been badly patterned versus a horse that's like not been patterned yet. And like sometimes like how you have to like fix those things is like takes a bit of creativity when you're undoing a bad habit.
So what about the horse that say consistently leaves his left hind behind?
Actually, Kira, when she was here, had an interesting one. She said that like if you have a horse that does that, like come in, halt, and then do a step of turn on the forehand from whichever side the horse leaves the hind leg out, and
So you go towards that or away from that leg?
away from it, but make them like step up and engage it. And she says if you repeat that a bunch, they start to.
The other thing that helps is come in shoulder in,
That's what I
whichever
was saying. Yeah.
leg hangs out, come in shoulder in to that side. So it's
Straighten
left
it.
hind shoulder and left. And kind of think about keeping a little left leg on until the halt is finished. You you know, just to kind of remind the horse to step through. Carry the stick on one side, maybe a little towel.
Also think it's helpful to think about squaring them up from behind. So if you think about going to halt and not letting them necessarily stop until you have kind of their hind legs squared on your legs a little bit.
Yeah.
Keep it
And we
moving.
don't, then you ride into it instead of trying to square them up from the front legs
Yeah.
first.
I think in the beginning, or not even just in the beginning, but like especially in the beginning, thinking that like you come down and then there's a walk step into halt. Like
Yeah.
what you were saying is like step into it, don't try and like stop,
Yeah.
you know? Like always prioritize that forward, fix it with forward. Back to front.
I didn't add it on this, so when they're young. I mean, I'm not talking about fixers that have bad habits already that we've been training, but I think the youngsters, I make it a little bit of a game that, usually I have a couple of shoulders and I don't get off until they square themselves. And it's really, they learn that really quick. Get off me, you know, I'm out and then I look, they're like, finally they go like. So they actually, sugar does. Yeah. But they, for the youngsters, that is, especially because we don't have that much influence over them yet. We think we do, but we don't. So, you know, that really helps when you teach them, you halt, you square, you have a little treat. And then a lot of times when they halt, they do that. Even if they don't come in quite square, they kind of do it themselves, and I usually like, do your thing.
So you halt at the end of the test and they square themselves up and they go.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, maybe not
You're
today.
getting off now. Okay, so we've halted, now we're gonna back up.
You already got my theory.
I find it really easier with geldings than mares. I don't know why I've had,
I
No.
can think about that.
I've had mares that are quite difficult to back up. I don't know if it's a little bit longer back. So those ones I like to start from the ground.
Yes.
That it's not about me, because it can be, those horses, sometimes mares I can find can be a bit emotional about it.
So when you start it from the ground, are you just,
Taking your
Start with
hand.
somebody on the ground, so I'll ask,
oh, okay.
as I'm sitting, I'll just have somebody come and like, kind of back them up like you would in cross ties, and just reward, and until they understand that, how to kind of figure out how to use their body before I really make it even on an aid.
I find it very difficult. I think it's a really difficult exercise.
I think it's sometimes, it's easy to correct when you don't have the back correct, right? And then it gets out of diagonal pairs, out of a clear rhythm. It's definitely a reflection to me, a lot of the contact what the back is doing.
And I think so often we're halting, and then, so we've got 42 pounds in each hand, and then we go to 76 pounds in each hand to try to make the horse back up.
I think, too, like I would say even like one notch more, like I'll make sure that they back well, like on the ground, in a rope halter, in the bridle,
Yeah.
and then making sure that they will really like back well from just like, squeezing both reins from the ground so that they don't just, we call it like in groundwork, moving their bubble. Like they don't just move because your bubble moves, but they'll move from the physical pressure, which a little bit.
Yeah,
like
so I do a lot of
mares.
groundwork with them, so that by the time like I'm leading them, if I'm backing up, they're backing up. So
Yeah.
that if I put somebody in front of them while I'm sitting on, they know if that person faces forward, it backs up. That's
Yeah.
what they're aid,
And then I would think like, I think the other thing like that I've gotten from like is like also not waiting too long. Like I know that Casey's husband Dana like says like one of the first things like that they teach or like maybe a little bit more Western approach is like, can I turn? Can I stop? And can I go backwards? And I think we, you know, we have like sort of very forward thinking, high powered, like, you know, energetic horses and stuff, and that, you know, like we get focused on that, and that's really important, but the ability, like, you know, to just make that a bit of a part of their basic from the beginning can be important too, because a lot of the time, I don't think we ask for it until they're like second level 5 or 6-year-old test, even like that. I don't even, is it a 5-year-old test? 5-year-old test. I think that that's like, I always like to look a little bit at different disciplines too, is like the difference is like, you know, we don't ask that question until they're 5 coming 6 in our test, whereas like, you know, someone that's gonna like work a gate is gonna be like,
Yeah.
and you have to do that
Yeah.
now, you know, just from a handiness perspective. So I think that that's also just an interesting thought on it.
Okay, we covered this a little bit in our last session, but if you have a horse who's somewhat confirmed for whatever reason and backing lateral, what are the little things to help that?
Do it in 2-point or,
If you have a horse that backs up
Lateral.
not in
Oh,
diagonal,
lateral.
You said,
I think lateral kind of rein back is a lot about how them dropping their back. So I try and do a little bit in 2-point, sideways, like literally that it's,
Yeah,
you can
I
move them
think it's
around.
sideways, I think
I was
it's
gonna say like rein back and push the haunches, so
Yeah.
rein back to like reverse turn on the forehand, I guess you would call it. Or like if you had to bring the
Just a
shoulders
little
more
sideways
back.
back. Sideways back.
Yeah,
I mean, I would have to, yeah, that's a tricky.
like back up and then I'd like step them over. I haven't had one of those yet, but like if
I have one, you can come.
okay. I'd be fascinated to see it.
You haven't had a horse that reined back laterally ever?
Yeah.
Okay, we have young, nice young rider or whatever, maybe an adult amateur that just got their first FEI horse. And the horse does what I call idiot changes, you just breathe on it and it doesn't change as it crosses by X, right? How do we teach that rider to ride a good change so that when they get on a horse, it isn't quite so doing it all by himself?
I'm a big believer in counter canter. So if a rider, because most horses, if they're a little trigger happy, and a lot of the FEI horses haven't done counter canter since, second level. And I believe it, I think it's a fabulous gymnasticizing exercise, and I think it should be worked on all the way through the Grand Prix, but if a horse is a little trigger happy, I think it helps to have the rider, even if it's just a really shallow serpentine, but be able to manage and control when the change happens and make the horse wait for the asking. That's one useful technique.
How do you help them understand the real age, not just canter, swing your leg back?
I like to, probably like going off at first, make them be able to counter canter and, like hold the lead, and then in counter canter, be able to go like haunches to the wall, so like haunches in the counter canter. And then that they need to be able to ride a 20-meter circle in counter canter and make them straight, and then almost, it would be like ren bears to the aids, but put the haunches to the inside of your circle without changing, and then be able to like push them up and switch your legs so that it's really not, like that it's not associated with like a little like change the bend or this or that, so that there is like much more of a push up over and change.
Can I ask you what you said? So you would say, basically have them like, go to a place where the horse would anticipate a change and not change until they're.
And put them in a spot where they really have to use their aids to hold the horse deliberately in the lead they want, and then be able to hold it, and then be able to change the shape of the horse, still
Without
holding him with
changing.
the legs, and then.
Just making them wait.
Yeah, but not just but putting them in a shape to make the horse have to wait, and if the horse is like so attached to if they change the bend, they change, then you take it all the way back to true canter and work on counter flex
Yeah.
in the true canter, and ren bear in the canter on a circle.
But I think I would probably step it back a little bit and keep it on the transitions again, and make sure that they can, like you said, hold that canter. And then I would go to these places and also maybe just start doing a little bit of tempo changes. Just in the band and keep the canter, and instead of making a change, also start doing a few little canter changes so they can control that.
come back to
Yes,
ask us
because
for
for the
the change.
change, we have to, get them a little bit to us, and I think if they just keep riding and they're just bending, then the horse just makes it easy for himself and they just cheat it out. So I think if I ask the rider first to, have a little bit of the tempo of transitions, then they get a little bit of feel of it, and then the horses also, they're like, oh, it's not the change, we have to wait a little bit, and then we can actually make them do physical asking of it.
So what do you tell them are the correct aids for a fine change? Maybe the horse isn't flipping leads all the time, but it's easy, I just swing my leg back and the horse changes, but that's not gonna work on every horse. At some point, we have to learn timing and we have to learn half halts and, no?
And it evolves with.
You think it happens by itself?
No. Of course not. If we all could do it.
I try to think of the canter as a 4-beat thing, but the 4th beat is airtime, so that help them find that moment in the stride, and then just help, teach them, I guess, what the aids I would like to see them use are, and then how to set up that. I probably count, I think we talked about earlier, I have people count like into even a single change. For me, I think of it at like a 4/10 beat, and
Okay, I know none of you have ever had this problem, but any thoughts on horses that change late behind? Nope, none.
I use, like if I'm in left canter, I have to visualize it. If I'm in left canter, like going down the center line, I'll try and make like right shoulder 4 and see if I can get them to like switch out a little bit early, like use the angle of the canter to try and get them to switch out early. And a lot of yielding, I do a lot of leg yielding,
In there.
a lot of leg yielding, half pass, till I can really control where the hind legs are, that I can quicken and slow down the hind legs.
Yeah, I think going back to availability and quality of canter, that usually there's something where the horse is taking up and freezing over, and if the quality of canter is diminished or the horse is not listening to the aids. So all the things like David was saying, about can you move them around and build them so that you can then set them up to this optimal place. And then sometimes depending on how or why they're doing it. I think there is a bit of why, because I probably had my first one that was in training a bit this winter, where the solution was actually to put his head way down to get the change, even though more often than not, you think of keeping the head much more up to keep them from changing early in front. This guy actually had to be able to access his back better and bounce his hind legs more, and they had been trying to keep him very up, so that was it. So I think understanding why and how the horse is changing late, because they can change late a lot of different
Ways.
These conversations are kind of hard to have because there are so
they're
many
also,
variations depending on why.
Some just really lean with their shoulders and always get away from you. Maybe the half halt just doesn't make the shoulders ready, and then the hind leg is, left out, or, there's so many.
sand skiing again.
Yes, I'm saying skiing again, but,
As a veterinarian, you've always got to ask, okay, is there a chiropractic issue? Is the horse fusing in a hock? Is there an SI issue? A lot of times if the base of the neck is really messed up and they can't lift their back and drop their neck and bascule over the back, they're gonna be, so in fairness to the horse, always consider what might be a physical issue.
Yeah, if it's a chronic, if you're I have tried everything and this is not working,
Yeah,
why is
dig
this?
deeper.
Or a horse that gets excessively hot about them too, sometimes there's a tipping point about okay, is this emotional? It's well, if you're trying to do everything right and make it not emotional, why? I think sometimes then you have to get to the why.
I don't know, my experience is that late changes behind, sometimes it's habit, they learn, that's the way they learn. And it can be for, as you say, many, many reasons. Are changes that are late in front more likely to be, rather than that, for the real rider situation? What do you think?
I think it depends on too where the horse is learning in the process. I think sometimes the young ones will go through that phase, and I'd always rather them be late in front,
Yeah,
because I find that easier to fix.
Yeah.
So what things do you do when the horse is late in front? If it's so easy to fix.
Again, it depends on like, okay, like if it's a young horse, it depends on where you are in the process. Like often I'll say, good job, good try, try it again, and just repeat it until like the horse gets it right and help them make the distinction. If it's like, some, like, again, like that's like, it's a little hard without the
It's hard
specific
is
horse in
conversation
front of
because
me.
it can be like their posture where they are, it can be what their energy is, it can
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Sometimes something as simple as a jump pole, you know, put a pole on the ground or a little X and kind of change directions as you're going. A lot of times that just helps them get the idea of picking up their whole body.
And usually I think if they're early behind, it's and is that what we're talking about
Yeah.
still?
Yeah.
It's an anticipation thing, right? So different things to either let them open up a little bit, maybe they're over collecting and getting a little bit over preparing, thinking about what it is, changing where you're doing it, how you're doing it, so that they're just kind of approaching it in a different way. Yeah, I find it's usually an anticipation somehow.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we always finish our work with stretching, and I think we all know that stretching is the result of the correct work and the horse using his back correctly, but we have a lot of our horses that perhaps weren't so perfectly trained, and our riders have to go in the ring and show stretching. Do you have any thoughts on ways, you know, we have a horse that's a little dull in his body and a rider that's still figuring it out. Do you have any thoughts on a way to help a horse understand that he can put his neck down?
One of the things I like to do is a little bit overbend them, you know, in a circle and not like crank them at all, but open the rein and a little bit overbend them. I think a lot of times they're so tight over the top, they can't stretch. There's usually that piece right in front of the wither and behind trapezius, nuchal ligament, blah, blah. And a lot of times if you can get them to stretch laterally, it's like horsey yoga. A lot of times they'll start to kind of like experiment with dropping down, and that can evolve into a better stretch.
Carrot on a stick on a fishing pole?
Right, I actually taught a stallion who had been badly trained, and he was sort of a bad third level, he was tight thoroughbred stallion. And I was riding him one day and I was so frustrated, I cannot get this through, I cannot.
Yeah.
So I went out, I was gonna go for a walk, so I went out in the field and they had just spread manure. This is the stallion. And he's going
Good boy.
So the next day I made sure I went out right after the manure spreader, and sure enough, and once he realized he could trot like this.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know, tall grass, if it isn't a stallion,
Yeah, yeah.
I know. Carrot on a stick, you know. Any other thoughts on that?
I would just say the same with the bending and the leg gilding, you know, if you can create that arch in their body and help them to vascular, you know, it's like being able to bend and get some softness in the rib cage, like up from your inside leg, that into a soft outside rein, you know, like you want them into that receiving side to create that.
Yeah, but if they don't usually go up and down easily, they don't go left and right easily.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
you know,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
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 And a lot of times I like to get the bend by yielding the outside rein rather than trying to take with the inside, because it allows the horse, you know, we're trying to stretch them. So this really allows them to stretch into the bend. The other thing that happens when you yield that rein is it amplifies the effect of the inside rein. You don't have to pull anymore. All of a sudden there's nothing counterbalancing it, right? So unless the horse wants to rip the bit through their mouth, they usually bend and they usually start to drop their neck. And how nice to get a yield with a stretch rather than a contraction.
So the opening rein,
Yeah.
help it with an opening.
Right, an opening rein and a yielding outside rein. Like martial arts, right? Yield to overcome. There you go.
I find if people don't get that stretch, they're quick to go make that reaction to like, you know, you will put your head down.
Right.
But sometimes
And then it becomes,
you have to give up control to gain control there, you know, and just give them the time to figure it out. Like even if it means you have to just go a
I often feel like baby horses that are, you know, they want them stretching, but it's like when they first start putting their neck down, they must feel like they're about to tip over or something.
Or these Spanish horses that we run too, yeah, because a lot of these Spanish ones, you have to really teach them slowly how to stretch. If you just put their head on the ground, they will somersault. And you have to learn how to like have the strength to really
Yeah.
stay through their body and let their neck out.
And
It takes a long
I
time.
also think Christoph he had actually a whole segment on that, and he said too, we have to be careful how far we put certain horses, like a young horse, you know, a stretch for certain horses, like with their nose to the knee is plenty low, you know, you see some of them, they're like literally hitting the nose on the sand, but then everything is flat and everything is
Yeah.
down,
Right.
so I think that's not necessarily a
Right.
stretch.
Exactly.
But, you know,
And at a
you
certain
know.
point, they're using their under
Right,
neck,
because
right?
they come
So
this
they're
way.
dropping their trunk. and-
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he was making sure into the stretching of the young horse,
Mhm.
that can go wrong in so many ways, very fast, you know.
Absolutely.
So we have to be careful on how far we allow it and what is good, and then probably it's a build-up to a proper stretch, and then confirmation also.
Absolutely, stretching and connection, right? Like
Yeah.
there's that spot, if you take them outside of, like what you were saying with the Spanish ones or a young one, outside of where they can balance, and obviously they learn to balance by sort of like, you know, struggling a little bit, but making sure that you're like always moving it like that little attainable amount, you know, and
Yeah.
being there also that they have something to go to, not just like trying to like,
Don't do it.
yeah, like, and then you end up with a butt in the air and the head down, when like a really good stretch is like back up, hind legs under, wither up,
Bascule.
like, and quite, you know, on the hind leg.
Go for it.
Well, and I think also the, like the stretch, you always wanna have a tiny bit of a still a feeling in your hands with it, it should not be a dropped rein. I think that's also misunderstood, stretches, people throw the reins at the horse, and I think that becomes also kind of
Describe
reductive.
the horse.
So the stretch, if you stretch something, it actually has to have some sort of a pull, of a resistance.
Resistant, like
Yeah.
a rubber band.
So,
You
exactly.
can't stretch a rubber band like this,
Right.
it has to be.
Yeah, so I think that's a lot in with the lower levels, I think kids or, you know, the old adage, I misunderstand the stretching is throwing the reins at them. And I think that's why it's also with the free walk to the extended walk. We have to let, you know, we have to be still with the mouse and from the oscillating, rather than just throw the reins like in the free walk with the young horses, or in the training.
Well, we've done our full hour. I'm gonna open it up for maybe one question or two, or what I would love to hear, because I know we have some very, very good trainers in here. Do you have anything to add? Let me ask that, some of you trainers. The subjects that we covered, do you have any little something you'd like to add?
I'm sorry. No, I don't want to add, but in the counter campus with the riders, young riders, yeah, and all this, how, let's say, do you tell them to watch their outside leg that you cannot see? Because what I see that they have one leg and then they start changing direction and basically they just throw, like almost the legs are off, you know, the horse is thrown to that side. And what I find difficult is how to help them guide through that moment when they're changing direction. Can I, sorry.
So, I have quite a few kids that had to learn that. I always make them first ask the horse a question, because most of them sit on educated horses. They have to ride in the left lead down the long side, and now the horse is bent around their inside leg, which is by the girth. Outside leg is supposed to be one hand behind it. Like you said, you will not be able to see it. A lot of the switching of the, and that happens sometimes, I see it when they sit on very educated horses. If they don't have enough core strength and their legs are a little busy, horses start swapping leads. I had them as much as doing 110s, and they're like, what is happening? And I'm like, sit still. Because the horse is reacting to it. So they have to really learn how to stay in the left. And then what I also do with them, once they learn to really keep their legs still and create a little core strength, they have to be able, for me, on a straight line, to bring the horse up, bring the horse in the opposite direction, so their seat still tells the horse left lead, and everything has to stay stable in the left lead. But I want them to be able to prepare the horse's body to be in the right preparation bend and alignment, and so they have to canter like that. I said, can you counterflex this horse and keep everything straight? If they cannot do that, you know, they don't have enough core strength and ability to keep everything the same. And that's mostly because the legs are a little weak, or they tilt forward and they don't sit right. So when they master that on the straight line, that they can counterbend the horse, then the last thing I say, okay, now change into that lead. So it's the last thing they do is the change.
So you do a fly and change it to camera canter,
On the long side.
and then versus like.
And then they stay in the camera canter. I mean, it's just like if they're on the left, they have to tell me that they can make,
Move the neck and not
you know,
lose
prepare the
weight.
horse, and then I say, okay, now do this a few times, and just for a stride or two.
Oh, you mean like for like learning the aid for a fly and change?
Yeah, so the horse doesn't swap the
Got
lead.
it, okay. Is that what you're asking?
Not quite.
Well, as a preparation, I guess as a step back, if,
Yeah.
like it will be a step back, because I see it in two ways on riders. There is a prepare the new change, and they just throw their body, you know, they go,
yeah.
and then just boom.
Yeah,
And the horse like, oh, I had no, you know, what am I
Right.
doing, right? And the same thing happens in the counter canter.
yeah,
When they have to, they almost throw through, like they have a line in, if we
Yeah.
draw that
Yeah.
serpentine line.
yeah.
So
the
they go
horses-
this way, and then they
slide.
just through this corner, you know,
Yeah,
and all of a sudden they just throw the body.
yeah,
And you see, and then you understand that the leg is not anymore doing, and I'm trying to find the vocabulary or the exercise to prepare them through that turn. And you said there's a step back. First I would make this exercise on the straight line and counterbend them the other way to watch if the legs are still working, you know,
Yeah.
before turning them with the serpentine. So that would be the step back, correct?
One thing I do when I'm teaching them the counter canter loop at first level, for example, it's so instinctive, and of course they've done the training level 3, where you change bend, and you change your aids to get to change a bend, so I usually make them trot it. Like they're gonna canter it, in other words, trot it without changing bend. Trot the canter loop.
Yeah.
But
Without changing
like,
bend.
as if it were a canter, so you're coming left, you're gonna have left bend, and then when you make the right turn, you're still, you know, the right part of the loop, you're still gonna have left bend. Because it becomes so instinctive to, and how do I turn him without pulling his head to the inside?
The other thing is sometimes you just have to remind them, just like, because you're in the left canter already, doesn't mean you release the aids for the left canter. So just remind them, and especially in the counter canter phase, that if they could a little bit remind the horse every stride, I still want left canter, I still want left canter, I still want. And that just helps the rider remember, stay here, stay here, stay here. You know, one of the things to play with.
I also think sometimes I tell them they can push maybe a little bit more on the outside leg and yield the haunches a little bit. And that keeps that canter,
Leg
that keeps that leg back.
Do we have one more? Anything to add? Nobody wants to add to all the wonderful little ideas we've had? Come on. Lauren, I know you're sitting there just dying to.
We're talking about shouldering. I told them to point where they want the horse and shoulders to go, because most people want to steer like a bicycle instead
Or
of
they pull
like a one-wheel wheelbarrow. And do the changes into uber striking and your half faults into uber striking. Put the rings in line.
Anybody have any other quick little thoughts? Come on.
Quick, sorry. In shouldering again, for instance, the priority, or in the leg yield, actually almost the same thing. You said priority is always forward, and that's what we've been all taught, right? So we start the leg yield, then the horse starts, you know, doing something, let's say funny, or the rider does. We say go forward. But down the line, the horse kind of almost like learns that he did the 2 steps, and it's enough. And now we're going forward. And so how do you balance those two to say, you know, okay, you know, yes, you do need to go forward, but at some point you actually need to keep crossing down that line. So how do you find that balance in the training of students and the horse? You know, to say, yes, forward is a priority, but there is a line and you have to cross.
You might have to get on the horse and fix it.
Okay, that's a good one.
One possibility.
Sounds to me like when they go forward, they probably like throw the reins away a bit to go forward, and then that's why, is that why that when they go sideways, then it's difficult again? And why you feel you have to go forward? Because if you're doing it
It's
correctly, you
like-
should have equal forward and sideways, right?
And I think that I find shoulder in, you know, and I often say, you just gotta keep riding little half halt, you gotta keep, it isn't just, the more you hold the rein, the more the outside rein, the more the horse is gonna lean on it,
Yeah.
and his shoulders will go back out, so you've gotta keep reminding him. And if you hold him, he'll lean on it, so you've gotta, sometimes they'll say, kind of throw him a little bit. Throw him a little bit.
Neck rein them.
Neck rein, yeah.
Yeah.
But not hold the aim, but you gotta keep reminding, just like the counter canter.
Does a horse run away with the shoulder and the shoulders only go sideways? Then maybe you should just explain to the rider, in that simple word, your shoulders are running away. Slow the shoulder down and let the hind leg catch up. So half of to slow the shoulder and give a little leg to push and yield the haunches. To make it more understandable to the rider that, you know, you're letting the shoulders run away. So just half of the outside rein a little bit to make the shoulders wave, but then don't forget to keep pushing the haunches or yielding the haunches a little bit to keep it crossing.
Yeah, I love, he said equal forward and sideways, so I guess then this tempo is like 1, 2, here 1, here's 2, counting. Okay, we'll watch.
Well, I think you like to say when riders are having that run away within the shoulders and get the inside hind under, think shoulder in on the diagonal as your leg yield.
It's a great visual,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
if they're educated.
Yes,
I think a good solution might be the addition of videotaping the rider so that
Yeah,
they
that's
see what
really
they're
helpful.
doing.
yes.
I will say one other, like when you guys are talking about young horses and like them learning to rein back and stuff, and Olivia brought up cases with Medina. Just like one other fun fact of being with that group is that like a lot of those young horses that don't learn how to back up usually wind up being like rearers down the line too, because they never learn that like there's a place out back there, like they end up feeling quite stuck. So
I like that, there's a
Yeah.
place out back there.
yeah, like a lot of the older horses he gets in are who are rearers
Yeah.
usually have no idea how to back up or to like snake backwards like you guys were doing.
Yes,
For flying changes, I like to do a counter, quarter line, true canter, walk, counter canter, walk, back to true canter, just to really explain the change of the aids.
yes, in the back.
I was gonna say, addressing the flying change and explaining it to somebody, just like this lady here in blue and white, that you have a schoolmaster and you're trying to teach somebody a flying change, well, back it up to how you taught that horse a flying change. So walk, your leg is saying left lead, walk, your leg is saying right lead, and the hand. And we are always pulling so much that it really needs to be the leg seat hand. And then you just let them canter for a little while, and then change your leg and hand, and then the horse will top it off. So teaching the rider just like we do with the horse.
Okay, well, thank you all very, very much. And thank you all. I know Chris as well as I do, I'm sure there's food left over there, please take some. Again, I would love it if you send me or send Mary any suggestions on the analogies, we love to keep making that list longer and longer, I find it great fun. And at some point, Mary will probably be sending you some sort of an evaluation and